After losing AnnaLeah due to rear underride, I quickly became aware that underride was a deadly problem due to the geometric mismatch between the bottom of large trucks and passenger vehicle bumpers, not just at the rear side of large trucks, but at the front as well. The Insurance Institute for Highway Safety recognized this problem long ago and published a report in August 1989 on the danger of collisions at the front of trucks and the potential of underride protection to make those crashes more survivable. The United Nations Economic Commission of Europe issued a standard effective 2003 to prevent passenger vehicles from running under large trucks upon collision. This standard was adopted by other countries and Australia on 16th, 2009. Internationally, truck manufacturers know how to produce and install front underride protection. In Australia, for example, semi-trucks are designed both like the European model as well as the American model, and truck manufacturers have installed front underride protection devices on both types of tractors in Australia, including those companies listed. In 2002, the University of Michigan Transportation Research Institute did a study on the problem of heavy truck aggressivity. Among other things, they concluded that front underride protection, if layered along with other countermeasures, could provide improvements in crash outcomes. In other words, making truck crashes more survivable. The front of a truck can go over a car at the rear, like in this 2009 crash, when a truck rear-ended multiple cars. 10 people died. NTSB investigated that crash. In fact, according to Fred Andersky and Bendix in 2017, every 15 minutes, a large truck rear ends a passenger car in this country. From the NTSB investigation of that crash, due to the larger vehicle's intrusion into the passenger vehicle's occupant compartment, there was a resulting loss of survivable space. Sorry, here. 10 people died when the truck went over 4 cars. As a result of that investigation, the NTSB made 2 safety recommendations. NHTSA develop performance standards for front underride protection systems and require that newly manufactured trucks be equipped with those front underride protection systems. This is what NTSB later said to NHTSA. Sorry, get this out of the way. Collisions involving the front of trucks were the most common type of collision. Passenger compartment intrusion and underride collision results in deaths and serious injuries and is common in truck frontal impacts. There's a strong relationship between the height of front truck bumpers and the occurrence of front underride. Since 2003, European Union countries required front underride protection systems on all newly manufactured heavy good vehicles, which indicates that such a standard is feasible. The NTSB therefore reiterates its prior recommendations that NHTSA develop performance standards for front underride protection systems for trucks and require newly manufactured trucks to be equipped with underride protection systems. NTSB wrote this response to NHTSA in November 2019. NHTSA states that requiring front guards on new trucks is no longer needed. I'm hoping that Keith Friedman, when he does his presentation later, can comment on that. The front of a truck can also go over a car in a head-on collision, like this one in June 2019. 8 people died, but the van driver walked away because the truck did not intrude into his survival space. It wasn't the crash that killed, it was the underride. In fact, here's the driver of that van back at the crash site not too long after it was all cleaned up. We petitioned NHTSA in 2014 for comprehensive underride rulemaking, including front underride protection. They said that they would consider it at a later date. They still have not. Yet people have died for decades and will continue to do so at an alarming rate. Just in the last several weeks, I've recorded 4 head-on fatal truck crash is in my memorial underride victim posts. How long will industry and government bury their heads in the sand while families bury loved ones due to death by underride? Note the intent of Congress for global harmonization of vehicle regulations as a means for improving motor vehicle safety, which leads me to mention the Front Underride webinar on April 17th, when our global friends shared their expertise with us in hopes that we could learn from each other and finally address this deadly problem here in the US. The presenters included the following. Current regulation was presented by Ian Knight, Director and Principal Engineer of Apollo Vehicle Safety. Original equipment manufacturer view was by Reimert Slobom, an expert engineer in passive safety at the Scania Group, which is a truck manufacturer. Crash data and future needs was presented by Ricard Fredriksson, Senior Advisor of the Swedish Transport Administration, the equivalent of NHTSA. And Ricard is also a professor at the Chalmers University of Technology. New countermeasures and test methods was presented by Rob Thompson, Professor of Vehicle Safety, the Chalmers University of Technology. And Front Override the US was, we'll hear later from Keith Friedman. He also shared from his Front Underride protection research. All of their presentations have been shared with you last week, and I hope to take time to look at them. Among other things, what I learned last week was that researchers were collaborating to build upon the Front Underride protection standard, which is already saving lives, with the hopes of improving it and saving even more lives. I also learned that it is possible for industry and government advocates to work congenially together. The webinar provided an amazing environment for collaborative discussion to reach a common goal. How unfortunate that attempts to foster similar so too often fall short within our borders. Truck impact guards are needed anywhere underride can occur. What should we do about it? Based on what we've learned, I'll make a motion later that recommendation 1, NHTSA should issue an advance notice of proposed rulemaking on front impact guards. I'll also make a second related motion that NHTSA should harmonize with global front override regulations. As it says in the EJA in section 24-11, the Secretary shall cooperate to the maximum extent practicable with foreign government, non-governmental stakeholders, the motor vehicle industry, and consumer groups with respect to global harmonization of vehicle regulations as a means for improving motor vehicle safety. Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions? Dan, do you have a comment?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair, and thanks, Marianne, for the presentation. I just have 2 quick questions. So the first, are there U.S. manufacturers today that manufacture front underride protection devices, whatever we want to call it?
You mean that are put on trucks in the U.S.?
Yeah, so similar, we have Angel Wings and the other ones for the side guards. Is there something along those lines for front guards?
So as I said in the one of the slides, to the best of my knowledge, there are truck manufacturers that manufacture trucks in the U.S. and internationally. I do not have evidence that they put any on the trucks that they manufacture in the U.S.
Okay,
Dan, as I mentioned before, XGuard, I know manufactures them. And then that email they sent out, they had videos of a highway collision where their XGuard front bumper kept the override from occurring. So it's a very good video. So give that a shot.
I just want to mention about that I reached out to Ian Knight, or to all the presenters from last week, and Ian Knight responded. He does have some concern about whether it's not just the height, but there's also a concern about energy absorption, and he would like to see that bump guard tested just to make sure that it meets the European standard.
Okay, Jeff, are you
I have one more plea, if you don't mind.
Sorry.
No worries. So thanks, Marianne. So I certainly agree with you that rear end related crashes when the commercial vehicle strikes a car, number one, they're oftentimes the truck driver, unfortunately, and they're serious accidents. I see NTSB's recommendation on front underride protection. Would we qualify automatic emergency braking as front underride protection? And because certainly if we have AEB, which NHTSA and FMCSA are soon hopefully going to mandate on CMVs, that's going to, if not prevent a crash from happening, it's going to seriously mitigate, in my opinion, would likely make the need for front underride protection a moot.
Okay, so can I respond to that?
I'd love to, please.
So as far as I'm concerned, all of our conversations about front, side, and rear should be both and, not either or, in terms of, crash avoidance or underwrite protection. So I think that by combining the two, you're going to increase the target population of saved lives.
Okay, so but on that note, though, if you have a car that, or rather a CMV that strikes the rear of a passenger vehicle at say 50 miles per hour, and you have a front underride guard that prevents override, we're still talking about serious injuries from a truck that's hitting, say, stop traffic, regardless of whether that front underride guard is there or not.
Right. So no one has said, as Jennifer said earlier, that it's going to stop every death. We're going for that. It will save some lives, that it will make truck crashes more survivable.
Okay. Thank you.
And many of the ones that much of the research that was presented last week primarily looks at head-on collisions as well. So it's not just rear-ending cars.
Okay. I appreciate the feedback. Thank you.
Mhm.
Jeff?
I think my questions were answered, Lee. I'll pass. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you, John.
Just thank you for the presentations, Marianne. I want to make clear, you kind of hinted that the recommendations that you're putting forward in your slideshow, those were not formal motions, and you'll be making a later formal motion.
Right. I'm not trying to get motions voted on now. No, I was just mentioning the motions that are on the list of motions that Lisa and Jim and Lisa sent out to us.
Thank you.
Was Harry trying to raise his hand there? Yeah.
I don't see it. Oh, I'm sorry, Harry.
Yeah, sorry, I couldn't find the hand raise thing, so I was trying to. Sometimes it makes it work when you do it yourself. I don't know. Seems to be no rhyme or reason. Yeah, just on the heels of I guess Marianne's comment, I think it would also be useful if we could, and I know we've come across some of it, but even just have submitted like amongst us via email, just some of the publicly available information on like conventional trucks that are sold in like the Australian market. Because again, I know there are differences between, cab over engine versus the conventional, which are more popular here. Because there are several Australian truck manufacturers like Mack that have on their website with conventional trucks that they include front underrun protection. So I think it might just be a good good information for all of us to look at, that it is it's not some far out concept, but actually something that is already implemented in trucks of a similar design that we see here on the US roads. So I think maybe after this, I know we've come across them, so I'm happy to submit them, via an email that everyone would get, just so we can have something to look at, to Marianne's point, that there is, front underarm protections being offered on trucks that are of a similar design to the ones we see on the US roads.
Right. And thank you, Harry. On that list, what for Australia is Western Star, and Western Star trucks are made in the US and then shipped over to Australia with that front underride protection. Thank you for the opportunity to let front underride protection be discussed. Oh, wait, Aaron has his hand up.
I just wanted to make one quick comment, in that in my work in accident reconstruction, I have observed trucks by Peterbilt do have some low frontal structure, which could be consistent with an underride protective device. And I'd be curious to hear from that manufacturer what that device is. Is it meant for front underride or underrun protection, or is it just part of their frame? But it's, within about 16 inches of the ground, and it connects the main rails of the vehicle. So I was curious about that design. So maybe there is something on the US market, but it's not really marketed as front underrun or underride protection.
This is just an opinion, but I believe when EPA regs required much larger radiators on the vehicles for cooling capacity, almost all the major OEMs went to large mega brackets, they call them, big castings on the front of rails, and bridge them together to mount those larger, much heavier radiators, cooling packages. And so there is more structure in the front. It was probably not designed for front underrun, but it was there for the structure needed to support the extra cooling for EPA regs.
Thanks, Jeff. And just, I again encourage everybody to listen to the videos of that presentation from last week, because I couldn't possibly do justice to all the details they provided about their research.